They gave him only a rocky plot as a joke. But what he found there, Michael Henderson felt his stomach churn when he saw the three men in suits laughing loudly in the real estate office. He had just lost everything in a legal battle that lasted 2 years, and now they were there to resolve the situation in the only way they thought fair. "Look, Michael Henderson, you didn't want to sell your little house for our project, so here's what we'll do," said Derek Sullivan, the owner of the construction company, still laughing. "We're giving you this plot here in place of your house. It's fair, isn't it?" He tossed the papers onto the table with contempt. "It's 2,000 square meters of nothing but stones and rock. Good luck trying to plant anything there." Michael Henderson picked up the documents with trembling hands. At 52 years old, he had lost the house where he raised his daughter Rachel, lost his job as a geologist at a mining company, and now was receiving as compensation a plot everyone knew was worthless. The men continued laughing as he signed the papers, commenting among themselves about how stubborn he had been and how he was now paying the price. When he left the real estate office, Michael Henderson drove straight to that plot. It was 15 kilometers from the center of Rockville, in rural Arizona. What he saw upon arrival made him question if he hadn't completely lost his mind. It was exactly as they had described, a sea of stones and rocks of all sizes, some as big as cars, scattered over an uneven surface that looked more like a battlefield. Rachel arrived an hour later, finding her father sitting on a large rock, staring fixedly at the plot. "Dad, for God's sake, what are you doing here?" she asked, getting out of the car with difficulty because of the uneven ground. "I'm thinking, honey." "Thinking about what? This isn't even fit for goat pasture," Rachel gestured angrily. "They pulled one over on you again. You should have sold the house when they offered a fair price." Michael Henderson stood up, picked up a small stone and examined it against the sunlight. "You know something strange, Rachel. I studied geology for 25 years. These stones, they shouldn't be here." "What do you mean they shouldn't be here?" "Look at their shape, their color, their texture." He showed the stone to his daughter. "This isn't a natural formation for this region. Someone brought these stones from somewhere else. Or else what, Dad?" "Or else something very interesting happened in this soil a long time ago." Rachel took a deep breath. Since her parents' separation 3 years earlier, Michael Henderson had become obsessed with crazy theories. First it was medicinal plants, then studies on solar energy, and now this. "Dad, you can't keep creating fantasies. You need to get a job, get back on your feet. This plot is worthless, everyone knows that." "Everyone thinks they know," Michael Henderson corrected, putting the stone in his pocket. "Tomorrow I'm going to start working here." "Working doing what?" "I'm going to remove all these stones and see what's underneath." Rachel looked at him as if he had announced he was going to fly to the moon. "Dad, do you have any idea of the size of this plot? It's 2,000 square meters. You'll break your back trying to remove these stones alone." "Then I'll break my back. But I'm going to find out what's here." That night, Michael Henderson could barely sleep in the small rented apartment where he had lived since the separation. He stayed awake making notes about the arrangement of the stones he had observed during the day. There was a pattern there. He was sure of it. The larger rocks formed almost a circle, while the smaller ones were scattered in a way that seemed random but wasn't. The next day, he loaded his pickup truck with some basic tools he still owned: a hammer, a pickaxe, a shovel, and an old wheelbarrow. When he arrived at the site at 7 in the morning, he found 2 workers from Sullivan Construction drinking coffee at the entrance. "Hey, Michael Henderson," one of them shouted. "Came to admire your work of art." "I came to work," he replied, unloading his tools. "Work?" The 2 laughed loudly. "Man, you're going to need some dynamite to break all these rocks." Michael Henderson didn't reply. He chose a medium-sized rock and began striking it with the hammer. The noise echoed across the site, making the workers laugh even harder. "Hey, check it out, guys," one of them shouted to his colleagues working on the neighboring lot. "The crazy guy's trying to break rocks with a sledgehammer." Within a few hours, the entire construction crew was talking about Michael Henderson's madness. Some stopped working to watch the show, betting on how long he'd last before giving up. Michael Henderson completely ignored the comments. He had learned in college that sedimentary rocks had distinct layers, and if broken at the right point, they revealed their internal composition. The first rock he managed to split showed small crystals embedded in the inner surface, with a slightly greenish hue he had never seen before. He put some fragments in his pocket and kept working. With each broken rock, more crystals appeared. Some were transparent, others had yellowish or bluish tones. When the sun was too high to continue, Michael Henderson had collected samples from 15 different rocks. That afternoon, he looked up his old colleague, Brian Sullivan, who still worked at the State University Geology Lab in Flagstaff. "Michael Henderson!" Brian greeted him with surprise. "Long time, I heard you were going through some problem." "I'm getting back on my feet, Brian. I need a favor." Michael Henderson showed him the crystal samples, explaining where he had found them. Brian examined them with a magnifying glass, making some notes. "They're pretty, but they don't seem to be anything special. Probably common quartz with some impurities, but I can run some basic tests if you want." "I'd be very grateful." "Just don't get your hopes up too high, okay?" Brian warned him. "Crystals like these are found in any rocky region of the Southwest." Michael Henderson went home discouraged, but he didn't give up. The next day he returned to the site determined to continue. The construction workers had lost interest in his madness and returned to their normal work. After a week of breaking rocks, Michael Henderson had cleared a small pile of rocks from an area of about 50 square meters. The work was exhausting, especially under the strong Arizona sun, but he noticed something interesting. The deeper he dug, the earth beneath the rocks was damper than expected. Rachel appeared at the end of the week, worried about her father's physical state. "Dad, look at you. You're sunburned, your hands are hurt, and for what? For a handful of common crystals." "Brian hasn't finished the tests yet," Michael Henderson defended himself. "And if it comes to nothing, how long are you going to continue with this obsession?" "Until I find out what's here. Dad, I spoke with the bank manager yesterday. You're 3 payments behind on the truck loan. If you don't pay soon, they'll take the car too." Michael Henderson stopped working and looked at his daughter. He knew she was right, but something inside him said he couldn't give up now. "Give me 2 more weeks, Rachel. If I don't find anything by then, I'll look for a job anywhere." 2 weeks, Dad. Not a day more." The following Monday, Brian called with the first test results. "Michael Henderson, I need to talk to you in person. Can you come here today?" His friend's tone of voice was strange, neither excited nor discouraged. Michael Henderson drove to Flagstaff with a racing heart. "The tests showed something interesting," Brian said as soon as he arrived. "These crystals have an unusual mineral composition. They're not common quartz like I thought. There's beryl here and also brandy." "Brandy, what do you mean?" "No, sorry," Brian laughed. "I meant aquamarine, beryl in the aquamarine variety. And there's more. I found traces of pink tourmaline and even some indications of raw emerald." Michael Henderson felt his heart race. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means your land might be sitting on a pegmatitic formation." "Do you know what pegmatites are?" "Of course. They're igneous rocks, where precious and semi-precious gemstone crystals form." "Exactly. But Michael, hold on. Finding traces doesn't mean there's a commercial mine under your land. It could just be a small vein, or isolated crystals. But it could be a larger formation too." "It could. To be sure, you'd need a complete geological study, and that costs a lot of money." Michael Henderson returned to the land with renewed energy. If there really were gemstones down there, it would explain why the land was covered in rocks, perhaps an abandoned old mining activity or a natural formation someone tried to exploit in the past. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Over the following days, Michael Henderson changed his strategy. Instead of breaking rocks randomly, he began digging in specific areas where the earth seemed looser. That's when he made a discovery that changed everything. About 1.5 meters deep, he found a natural cavity in the rock. He used a flashlight to examine the hole. The cavity was larger than it seemed from the surface, extending to the sides like a small cave. And on the walls of the cavity, the crystals shone with an intensity that took his breath away. "My God," he murmured, lighting every corner with the flashlight. It was like a giant geode. The walls of the cavity were covered in crystals of various colors and sizes. Some were as large as closed fists, others as small as grains of rice, but they all shone with a purity that indicated high quality. Michael Henderson emerged from the cavity trembling with emotion. For the first time in years, he felt that luck was turning in his favor. But he also knew he needed to be cautious. If the news spread before he had the mining rights properly registered, he would lose everything again. He called Brian immediately. "Brian, I need you here today. I found something you have to see in person." "Michael, it's already 5 in the afternoon. I can't leave now." "Brian, for God's sake, it's urgent. If you don't come today, I could lose the biggest discovery of my life." Something in the desperation of his friend's voice convinced Brian. He arrived at the land 2 hours later, equipped with more sophisticated testing gear. When he went down into the cavity, Brian was silent for almost 5 minutes, just shining his light and observing the crystals. "Michael, this is a real pegmatitic formation." "That's what I was trying to tell you." "No, you don't understand." Brian turned to him with wide eyes. "This isn't just a small vein. Look at the size of this cavity and look at the quality of these crystals." Brian took some samples from the walls, doing basic chemical tests right there. "Michael, there's gem-quality aquamarine here. And this here," he illuminated a section of the wall where pink crystals stood out. "This here is first-rate pink tourmaline. And look at this." He pointed to some small green crystals. "If I'm not mistaken, these are raw emeralds." Michael Henderson leaned against the wall of the cavity, feeling his legs go weak. How much could this be worth?" "I don't know. I'd need a full assessment. But Michael Henderson, if this formation extends under your entire property, you might be sitting on a fortune. And if it doesn't extend? Even if it's just this cavity, you have enough material here to live comfortably for the rest of your life. And look." Brian illuminated the bottom of the cavity. "It seems to continue downward. This might just be the tip of the iceberg. When they left the cavity, the sun had already set." Michael Henderson covered the entrance with rocks and dirt, disguising its existence. "Brian, you can't speak of this to anyone yet. I need to sort out the legal situation first." "Of course, but Michael Henderson, you need professional help. You have to hire a geologist specialized in mineral prospecting. You have to regularize the mining rights with the National Mining Production Department." "I know, the problem is I don't have money for any of that." "Maybe I can help. I know some guys who finance mineral prospecting in exchange for a share of the profits." Michael Henderson slept only 2 hours that night. He stayed awake making plans, calculating possibilities, dreaming of a future that seemed too good to be true. But he was also haunted by the possibility of losing everything again. He knew stories of people who discovered deposits and were cheated by unscrupulous businessmen. The next morning, Rachel appeared at the property earlier than usual. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something serious." "What is it, daughter?" "I talked with Mom yesterday. She's worried about you. Says the neighbors are commenting that you've turned into a beggar who digs holes in the middle of nowhere." Michael Henderson felt a mix of anger and sadness. Jennifer, his ex-wife, had always doubted his dreams and projects. "And what does your mother think I should do?" "She knows the manager of a security company. They need night watchmen. It doesn't pay much, but—" "Rachel," Michael Henderson interrupted, "what if I told you I might have found something very valuable on this property?" "Dad, please, no, listen." He grabbed some samples of the crystals he had collected the day before. "Look at this." Brian ran tests. "They're semi-precious stones. Some might even be precious." Rachel examined the crystals and Michael Henderson saw a flicker of interest in her eyes. "They are pretty. But Dad, even if they are precious stones, how much are they worth? A few $100s? That won't solve your problems. What if it's not just a few stones? What if there's much more?" "What do you mean, much more?" Michael Henderson hesitated. He didn't want to reveal the discovery of the cavity yet, but he needed his daughter's trust. "Rachel, give me just 1 more week. If I can't prove there's something valuable here, I'll take any job that comes along." 1 week, Dad, but promise you'll stop with this after that." "I promise." That afternoon, Brian brought a friend named Daniel Morrison, an expert in precious stone appraisal. He was a man of about 60 with graying hair, who had worked in the gem market for decades. "Brian told me about your discovery," said Daniel Morrison. "I brought some equipment to do a more precise assessment." The three descended into the cavity. Daniel Morrison was silent for a long time, examining the crystals with a jeweler's loupe and running tests with small devices he had brought. "Son," he finally said, "do you have any idea what you've found here?" "A pegmatitic formation with quality crystals," replied Michael Henderson. "No, you've found one of the largest occurrences of precious stones I've seen in 40 years of my career." Daniel Morrison illuminated a specific section of the wall. "This aquamarine here is of international gem quality, and this pink tourmaline, I've never seen one with this clarity and color." "And the emeralds?" asked Brian. "Ah, the emeralds." Daniel Morrison smiled. "These small ones here are worth more than everything else combined. Quality American emerald is one of the most valuable stones on the world market." Michael Henderson felt the world spin around him. How much could all this be worth? Hard to say without a full analysis, but just from this cavity, hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. And if the formation continues, then we're talking millions. Daniel Morrison made some notes in a small notebook. "Michael Henderson, you need urgent legal counsel. You have to claim the mining rights before anyone discovers this place. And you need capital to do the proper exploration. Do you know anyone who can help?" "I do, but it has to be discreet. If this news leaks, you'll have people trying to take your land in every way possible." That night, Michael Henderson called Rachel. "Daughter, I need to talk to you about something very serious. Can you come here early tomorrow?" "Dad, if it's to show me more little stones." "Rachel, trust me this time. It's important." The next day, Michael Henderson took his daughter to the cavity. Her reaction was exactly what he expected. First skepticism, then admiration, and finally understanding of the magnitude of the discovery. "Dad, is this real?" "It's real, daughter." "How much is all this worth?" "We don't know yet, but it could be enough to change our lives completely." Rachel sat on a rock, trying to process the information. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I needed to be sure. And because I needed to protect our discovery until we could get everything legally sorted. What are we going to do now? We're going to hire a lawyer specializing in mineral law, and we're going to look for serious investors to finance the exploration." Daniel Morrison had recommended a law firm in Phoenix that specifically handled mining issues. Michael Henderson and Rachel traveled there the following week. The lawyer, Dr. Richard Thornton, listened carefully to the account of the discovery. "You did the right thing seeking legal counsel quickly," he said. "Mineral law in the United States is complex, but you have some advantages. First, the land is yours, with a definitive deed. Second, there are no mineral research applications in the area yet." "What does that mean exactly?" asked Rachel. "It means you can apply for the prospecting rights to the land. That will give you exclusivity to exploit the minerals found there." "And how much does that process cost?" "The NMPD fees are relatively low. The problem is the mandatory technical studies. You'll need a complete geological report, environmental impact study, mining plan." "How much does that cost?" Michael Henderson asked, dreading the answer. "Between $50,000 and $100,000 depending on the complexity." Michael Henderson felt his stomach sink. He didn't even have $50 in his account. "Doctor, is there any way to get that money without losing control of the operation?" "There is. Partnerships with mining companies. But you have to be very careful. Often these agreements are disadvantageous for the landowner." "What kind of agreement would be fair?" "You provide the land and the deposit. The company provides the capital and technical expertise. The profit split should be at least 50-50, but preferably 60-40 in your favor." Dr. Thornton gave some recommendations for reputable companies and offered to negotiate any agreement on their behalf. During the drive back to Rockville, Rachel was thoughtful. "Dad, this could go very right or very wrong." "Why?" "Because we're dealing with very high values. Money like that attracts all kinds of people, good people and bad people." "That's true. But daughter, this might be our only chance to rebuild our lives." "I know. I'm just afraid someone might try to cheat us again." Rachel's concern proved to be well-founded a few days later. Michael Henderson arrived at the property on Monday morning and found 3 unfamiliar men walking around the land, examining the rocks. "Excuse me," he said, approaching them. "This is private property." "We know," replied one of them, a tall man around 40 years old. "My name is Scott Sullivan. I'm a representative for Colorado Valley Mining." Michael felt a chill in his stomach. How had that company discovered his discovery? "What do you want here?" "We want to make a proposal. We know you've found some interesting mineral formations here. Our company has the expertise to explore this professionally." "Who said I found anything?" "Michael, let's not waste time. We know you discovered a pegmatitic formation with occurrences of gemstones." Scott smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Our proposal is simple. You sell us the land for $500,000, cash, and you don't have to worry about anything else." "And if I don't want to sell?" "I think you should reconsider. Mining is a complicated business. A lot of bureaucracy, a lot of risk. You could spend a fortune on studies and find nothing commercially viable." "Thanks for the proposal, but I'm not interested in selling." Scott exchanged glances with the other 2 men. "Michael, you've been through a lot of trouble in recent years. Lost your house, lost your job. It would be a shame to lose this too." The tone of his voice changed completely. It was no longer a friendly offer. Was that a threat? It was a friendly piece of advice. Scott handed over a business card. "We'll leave the offer open for a week. After that, we can't guarantee the terms will remain the same." The 3 men left, leaving Michael worried and confused. How had they discovered his discovery? Who had leaked the information? He called Brian immediately. "Brian, did you tell anyone about what we found here?" "Of course not. Why are you asking?" Michael told him about the visit from the mining company representatives. "That's strange," said Brian. "I only told Daniel Morrison, and I know he wouldn't tell anyone." "Then how did they know?" "I don't know. But Michael, be careful. If this company is interested this quickly, it's because they know you found something very valuable." That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about who could have discovered his discovery. The only people who could have observed his movements were the workers from Sullivan Construction. The next morning, he went straight to find one of the workers he always greeted when arriving at the property. "Samuel, can I ask you a question?" "Sure, Michael." "Have you seen any strange activity around here? People who don't work on the site observing my land?" Samuel looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Look, Michael, last week a guy showed up here asking about you. Said he was a journalist, wanted to do a story about people who lost their homes to construction companies." "What kind of questions did he ask?" "He asked how long you'd been working on the land, if you'd found anything interesting, if you'd brought any different equipment." "And what did you say?" "I said you came every day, that you were breaking rocks, and that I saw you bringing some strange devices last week." Michael felt his blood run cold. The strange devices were the testing equipment Brian and Daniel Morrison had brought. "Samuel, did this man give you any money for the information?" "Yes, he did, $50. Said it was for coffee." "What did he look like?" "Tall, around 40, dark hair. He had a black pickup truck." The description matched Scott Sullivan from the mining company exactly. Michael Henderson thanked Samuel and left, knowing he needed to speed up the legal process before the situation spiraled completely out of control. He called Dr. Thornton, explaining the urgency of the situation. "Doctor, is it possible to expedite the mining rights application?" "It's possible, but it will cost more. And Michael, you need security for the land. If there really is a valuable deposit there, other companies might try break-ins or sabotage." "Sabotage how?" "Contaminate the area, destroy evidence of the deposit, forge documents questioning your ownership of the land. I've seen it all in this business." Michael Henderson was beginning to realize that discovering the deposit had only been the start of his problems. Dr. Thornton managed to expedite the bureaucratic procedures through the payment of additional fees, but this required Michael Henderson to sell his pickup truck. Rachel protested, saying he was putting all his eggs in one basket. "Dad, what if it goes wrong? You'll be left without transportation, without money, with nothing." Honey, if it goes right, I can buy 10 pickup trucks. And if it goes wrong? If it goes wrong, at least I tried. I can't spend the rest of my life wondering, what if? While they waited for the results of the legal proceedings, Michael Henderson hired a local young man known as Little Joe to keep an eye on the land at night. "Michael Henderson, why do you want me to watch this pile of rocks?" asked Little Joe. "I just want to make sure nobody messes with my things here." "What things?" "All I see is rocks and more rocks." "That's exactly what you have to protect, the rocks." Little Joe thought that was very strange, but he needed the money and accepted the job. In the second week after Scott Sullivan's visit, exactly what Dr. Thornton had predicted happened. Michael Henderson arrived at the land one morning and found several of the rocks marking the entrance to the cavity overturned. Someone had been there during the night. "Little Joe, didn't you see anything last night?" "Yes, I did. 3 men arrived in a pickup truck around midnight. They said they were friends of yours, that they had come to get some tools." "And you let them?" "They knew you by name, knew you worked here. I thought it was true." Michael Henderson went down into the cavity and saw that someone had taken samples from the walls. Not many, but they were exactly from the areas with the highest quality crystals. He called Dr. Thornton immediately. "Doctor, they broke into my land and stole samples from the deposit." "That was expected. They want to do their own assessment to know exactly how much what you found is worth." "And what can I do?" "For now, nothing. Technically, it's not a crime to take a few rocks from a piece of land. But this confirms that your discovery is very valuable. Companies don't waste time and money investigating worthless deposits." "And the papers?" "They'll be ready next week. From then on, you'll have exclusive rights to any mineral found on the land." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us, who are just starting out. Now continuing. 2 days after the break-in, Scott Sullivan appeared again, this time accompanied only by an older, well-dressed man who introduced himself as Dr. Raymond Cooper, the mining company's director. "Michael Henderson, I've come personally to make a new offer," said Dr. Raymond. "Our preliminary assessment confirmed that you have a very interesting deposit here." "What assessment?" "Let's not waste time pretending we don't know what's here," said Scott. "You found a pegmatitic formation with a significant occurrence of aquamarine, tourmaline, and emerald. So what?" "So our new offer is $2 million for the land," said Dr. Raymond. "It's a very generous offer." Michael Henderson felt his heart race. $2 million was more money than he had ever dreamed of having in his life. But something about the men's behavior made him suspicious. "Why are you offering so much?" "Because we know the real value of what you have here, and we know you don't have the capital to develop it properly." "What if I find investors?" Dr. Raymond Cooper and Scott Sullivan exchanged glances. "Michael Henderson, be realistic. Mining requires a lot of money, a lot of expertise, a lot of connections. You're a retired geologist with no resources. It could take years to get an operation off the ground if you ever do. And in the meantime, you'll just wait?" "Not necessarily," replied Scott. "There are other interesting areas in the region. If you don't want to sell, we'll focus on other projects." "You're lying," Michael Henderson said calmly. "Excuse me?" "If there were other areas as interesting as this one, you wouldn't be here offering $2 million. You know I've found something exceptional, and you know you won't find anything like it easily." Dr. Raymond Cooper smiled, a cold smile. "Michael Henderson, you're right. Your deposit is exceptional. That's exactly why you should accept our offer. Money in hand today is worth more than uncertain possibilities tomorrow." "Thank you, but I'm not interested." "Are you sure?" Scott insisted. "Because once the mineral rights paperwork is filed, things could get more complicated for you." "Complicated how?" "Inspections, questions about environmental irregularities, investigations into the origin of the discovery." Dr. Raymond Cooper listed. "American bureaucracy can be very difficult when the right people aren't on your side." Now the threat was explicit. "Are you threatening me?" "We're warning you about the reality of the business," said Dr. Raymond Cooper. 1 week to think it over. After that, our offer will be withdrawn." The 2 men left, leaving Michael Henderson with a mix of anger and fear. He called Dr. Thornton. "Doctor, they're openly threatening me." "It was expected." "How much did they offer?" 2 million. Dr. Thornton was silent for a few seconds. Michael Henderson, if they're offering 2 million, your deposit is worth at least 10. How so? Companies in this business never offer more than 20% of the real value in a first negotiation. Often they offer less than 10%. So my deposit could be worth 10 million or more. That's why it's so important to get the right partners. You could become very rich, but only if you don't sell cheap now. That night, Michael Henderson talked at length with Rachel about the situation. Dad, 2 million is a lot of money. I know, honey, but it might only be a fraction of the real value. And if it is? The doctor said it could be worth 10 million, but what if it's worth less? What if it's only worth 3? Wouldn't it be better to secure the 2 now? Rachel, I've spent my whole life being cautious, accepting what was offered, never betting high. And where has that gotten me? I lost the house, I lost the marriage, I almost lost my dignity. This might be my only chance to really win in life, or to lose everything for good. Honey, if I accept the 2 million now and find out later the deposit was worth much more, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. And if you refuse and lose everything, then at least I'll know I tried. The next morning, Dr. Thornton called with good news. Michael Henderson, the documents are filed. As of today, you have exclusive rights to any mineral found on the land. And now? Now, we need to find serious investors. I have contacts with some reputable companies that might be interested. What about Colorado Valley Mining? Forget them. From the threats you described, they're not serious people. Reputable companies don't apply that kind of pressure. Dr. Thornton scheduled meetings with 3 different companies for the following week, all in Phoenix, all with good reputations in the market. The first meeting was with White Rock Mining, a family-owned company that had been operating in the sector for 50 years. The director, Mr. Joseph Stoneman, was a 70-year-old man with white hair who inspired confidence. Michael Henderson, Dr. Thornton told me about your discovery. Can you show us some samples? Michael Henderson opened a case with crystals carefully organized inside. Mr. Joseph examined them with a magnifying glass, taking notes. Exceptional quality, he finally said. Especially this aquamarine here. And these emeralds. He shook his head in admiration. 40 years in the business, and I've rarely seen American emeralds with this purity. What would your proposal be? Asked Dr. Thornton. First, we would need to conduct a complete geological study to assess the real size of the deposit. That study costs about $80,000. If the deposit proves to be commercially viable, we propose a 60-40 partnership with 60% for you. And if the deposit isn't commercially viable, we absorb the loss from the study. You pay nothing. It was a fair offer, much better than anything Colorado Valley Mining had offered. The second meeting was with Southwest Gems, a smaller company, more specialized in gemstones. Your discovery interests us greatly, said the director, Dr. Patricia Sullivan, but our proposal is different. Instead of a partnership for large-scale mining, we prefer to buy your production at a fixed price above market value. How would that work? You handle the artisanal extraction. We buy all the production at a price 30% above the international market rate. You keep 100% ownership, we guarantee the sale. And if the deposit is larger than we expect, even better, more production for us, more profit for you. The third company, St. Benedict Mining, made a completely different proposal. We want to buy the land, said the director, Charles Henry Moore, but not for the 2 million those amateurs offered. Our proposal is 5 million in cash. Michael Henderson was tempted. 5 million was more money than he could spend in several lifetimes. Why are you offering so much more? Because we are a serious company, with enough capital to make a fair offer, and because we know the real value of what you found. What value is that? From what we saw in the samples and the description of the formation, we estimate your deposit could produce between $20 and $50 million in gemstones over 10 years. Michael Henderson felt his head spin. 50 million. And why don't you propose a partnership? Because partnerships are complicated. There's always conflict over extraction methods, profit sharing, investments. It's simpler for everyone if we sell and buy. On the way back to Rockville, Dr. Thornton was thoughtful. What did you think of the proposals? White Rock seems the most honest, said Michael Henderson. I agree, but St. Benedict's offer is tempting. $5 million is a lot of money. It is. But Michael Henderson, if the deposit really can produce $50 million, $5 million is little. And if it doesn't, what if the estimate is wrong? That's the risk. That night, Michael Henderson had a difficult conversation with Rachel. Daughter, I need your opinion. He told her about the 3 proposals. Dad, $5 million guaranteed or a chance at much more? That's exactly the choice. What does your heart say? My heart says to try for the maximum. My head says to secure the $5 million. What if you asked Mom? Your mother always thought I was too much of a dreamer. She would definitely say to take the $5 million. And do you agree with her? Michael Henderson was silent for a long time. Rachel, your mother wasn't wrong. I was always too much of a dreamer, always betting on projects that didn't work out. Maybe it's time to be more practical. Or maybe it's time to finally hit it big on a major bet. Why? Dad, you're 52 years old. If you take the $5 million now, you'll live comfortably for the rest of your life. But if you can get much more, you could help a lot of people. You could do bigger things. Like what? Remember when you dreamed of starting a geological consulting firm? With a lot of money, you could do that. You could create jobs, help other geologists. Michael Henderson hadn't thought of that. That's true. And Dad, look at everything you've been through these past few years. You lost everything because of dishonest people. This could be your revenge, proving you can win big. The following Monday, Michael Henderson called Dr. Thornton. Doctor, I want to accept White Rock Mining's proposal. Are you sure? I am. If it works, everyone wins. It works. If it fails, at least we tried to do the right thing. Then let's move forward. Dr. Thornton scheduled a meeting to sign the preliminary contracts. White Rock Mining would begin the geological studies the following week. On the day of the signing, Mr. Joseph Stoneman brought the entire technical team that would work on the project. Michael Henderson, I want you to meet our team. This is Dr. Frederick Wallace, our chief geologist. This is Dr. Anne Christine, our pegmatite specialist. And this is John Baptist, our master gemstone extractor. Michael Henderson greeted everyone, feeling like part of a professional team at last. When do you start work? Tomorrow, said Dr. Frederick. We'll bring drilling equipment to map the entire extent of the formation. And how long will the studies take? Between 6 and 8 weeks for a complete report. That night, for the first time in years, Michael Henderson slept soundly. He felt he was finally on the right path. The drilling work began on Tuesday. The White Rock Mining team brought sophisticated equipment Michael Henderson had never seen up close. Machines that drilled into the soil at various points, extracting samples for analysis. Dr. Frederick, what are you finding? It's too early for definitive conclusions, but the signs are very positive. The pegmatitic formation extends far beyond what we imagined. How far? It seems to cover almost your entire property, and it goes deeper too. At the end of the first week, Dr. Frederick called Michael Henderson for a private conversation. Michael Henderson, I need to tell you something we've discovered. What is it? Your deposit isn't just common pegmatite. It has very specific characteristics that indicate high potential for exceptional quality emeralds. Is that good? It's exceptional. High-quality American emerald is worth more per carat than diamond. How much more? Depending on purity, it could be worth between $5,000 and $10,000 per carat. Michael Henderson did the math quickly, if there really were many emeralds there. Dr. Frederick, I'm trying not to get my hopes up too much. I understand. But Michael Henderson, in 20 years of doing these studies, I've never seen a formation with so much potential. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In the second week of the studies, something unexpected happened. Michael Henderson arrived at the property one morning and found Scott Sullivan talking with Dr. Frederick. What are you doing here? Michael Henderson asked Scott. Talking with your partner about our new proposal. Michael Henderson looked at Dr. Frederick, who seemed embarrassed. What new proposal? Colorado Valley Mining is willing to buy White Rock Mining's stake in the project, explained Scott, for a very interesting price. And you're considering it? Michael Henderson asked Dr. Frederick. Michael Henderson, they offered 3 times the value we've invested so far. It's hard to refuse. Doctor, Frederick, may I speak with you in private? The two stepped away from Scott. Doctor, what's going on? Look, Michael, our company is small. 3 times our investment is a lot of money for us. And the contract we signed? It allows us to sell our stake provided you agree. And if I don't agree, then we continue with the original project. Michael looked at Scott, who was waiting for the answer with a confident smile. Dr. Frederick, why do they want to buy your stake? For the same reason we're considering selling. The preliminary studies show your deposit is even more valuable than we imagined. How much more valuable? Dr. Frederick hesitated. Michael, if the final tests confirm what we're seeing, your deposit could be worth more than $100 million. Michael felt the world spin around him. 100 million. And they know this? Apparently, yes. That's why they're so interested. Michael walked back to where Scott was waiting. What exactly is the new proposal? Simple. We buy White Rock Mining's stake for a sum that satisfies them, and we offer you 50% of the operation's net profits. 50%? Before you wanted to buy everything. It's that now we know the real value of your discovery. 50% of 100 million is 50 million for you. And if I say no, then White Rock Mining might still accept our offer, and you're left with 60% of a much smaller operation. Michael realized he was being cornered. Colorado Valley Mining knew White Rock Mining was tempted to sell and was using that as leverage. I need to speak with my lawyer. Of course, but the offer is only valid until tomorrow. Once again, the time pressure. Michael called Dr. Thornton immediately. Doctor, the situation has gotten complicated. He explained everything that had happened. Michael, legally White Rock Mining can sell their stake, but you have the right of first refusal. How so? If they're going to sell for X, you can buy it for X as well. But I don't have the money for that. Then we need to arrange it. How? There are banks that finance mining projects. With White Rock Mining's studies, we can get a loan. And if we can't? Then you'll have to accept the partnership with Colorado Valley Mining or lose control of the project. That night, Michael didn't sleep a wink. He was beginning to understand that discovering the deposit had been the easy part. The hard part was dealing with everyone who wanted a piece of the discovery. Dr. Thornton worked all night preparing documents to present to the bank. The next morning, they went to a meeting at Southwest Bank in Phoenix. The business credit manager, Mr. Paul Mendez, carefully analyzed the documents. Mr. Michael, the project is indeed interesting, but mining loans are high risk. We would have to charge high interest. How high? 15% per year plus monetary correction. And how much could you lend? Based on the preliminary studies, up to 2 million. Michael did the math. With 15% annual interest, 2 million would become almost 3 in 2 years. But if the deposit was really worth 100 million, what collateral is required? The land and the deposit itself. If you don't pay, the bank gets everything. It was a huge risk. If anything went wrong, Michael would lose everything again. I need to think. Of course, but our approval takes about 2 weeks. On the way back, Dr. Thornton was worried. Michael, 2 weeks is a long time. Colorado Valley Mining won't wait. What can I do? Accept their proposal temporarily and try to reverse it later. Is that possible? It's complicated, but possible. When they arrived at the site, Scott Sullivan was waiting with the contracts ready. So, Michael, what's your decision? I accept the proposal temporarily, but I want a clause that allows me to buy back White Rock Mining's stake within 6 months. Why? Because I can secure financing for it. Scott Sullivan spoke briefly with Dr. Raymond Cooper on the phone. I accept, but the buyback price will be 50% above what we pay now. It was another complication, but Michael Henderson had no choice. The contracts were signed that afternoon. From that moment on, Colorado Valley Mining controlled 40% of the operation. Michael Henderson retained 60% and had 6 months to get the money to buy back the 40%. The extraction operation began 2 weeks later. Colorado Valley Mining brought in large-scale mining equipment that completely transformed the site. "Michael Henderson, I want you to see this," said Dr. Frederick Wallace, who had remained on the project as a consultant. They descended into a new gallery that had been excavated following the pegmatite formation. The walls glittered with crystals of all sizes and colors. "Dr. Frederick Wallace, I've never seen anything like it." "Neither have I. And look at this here." He illuminated a section of the wall where green crystals of various sizes were embedded in the rock. Emeralds in quantity and quality rarely seen in the world. How much could all this be worth? Just from this gallery? Several million. And we have indications that the formation continues for much more space. In the first 2 months of operation, production exceeded all expectations. Over 5 kilograms of high-quality emeralds were extracted, along with significant quantities of aquamarine and tourmaline. Michael Henderson received weekly production reports. His share of the profits had already surpassed $3 million. "Rachel, look at this," he showed the report to his daughter. "In 2 months, we've already recovered much more than the $5 million that St. Benedict Mining had offered." "Dad, this is unbelievable." "And it's just the beginning. Dr. Frederick Wallace says we haven't even reached the richest parts of the formation yet." But not all was good news. The operation also brought unexpected problems. The movement of heavy trucks was damaging the access road, and local residents began to complain. Furthermore, news of the discovery spread, attracting hundreds of illegal prospectors who tried to invade the property at night. "Michael Henderson, we're going to have to hire armed security," said Scott Sullivan. "Operating costs are increasing. How much will that cost?" "About $50,000 a month. And who pays?" "It comes out of the operation's profits. It affects everyone proportionally." Michael Henderson began to realize that a mining operation involved far more costs than he had imagined. Besides security, there were environmental fees, municipal taxes, crew salaries, equipment maintenance. By the end of the 3rd month, his net profits were lower than expected, even with high production. "Dr. Frederick Wallace, are all these costs normal?" "It's normal. Mining is an expensive business. That's why many small discoveries are not commercially viable." "But our discovery is large." "Yes, and that's why, even with all these costs, it's still very profitable." In the 4th month, something happened that changed everything. The geologists discovered that the pegmatite formation extended beyond the boundaries of Michael Henderson's property. "How far beyond?" he asked. "It appears to continue onto the neighboring property where Sullivan Construction is developing the project," explained Dr. Frederick Wallace. "And what does that mean?" "It means the deposit is much larger than we thought, but it also means there could be legal problems." "What kind of problems?" "If the formation continues onto the neighboring property, they could also claim mining rights." Michael Henderson felt his stomach sink. After all the struggle to get there, he could lose part of the discovery to the same construction company that had given him the worthless land. Dr. Richard Thornton was called immediately. "Michael Henderson, the situation is complex. In mineral law, whoever first claims the rights to a deposit has preference. But if the deposit extends to neighboring lands, the owners of those lands can challenge it." "And what can we do?" "Claim rights over the neighboring land as well if it's not legally occupied." "But it is. The construction company bought the land." "Yes, but they bought it for construction, not for mining. They are 2 different types of land use." "So can we claim mining rights on their land?" "We can try. But they will obviously challenge it." The legal battle began the following week. Sullivan Construction hired expert lawyers and filed a lawsuit questioning the extent of Michael Henderson's mining rights. At the same time, Michael Henderson tried to claim rights over the neighboring land, but discovered the construction company had anticipated this and filed the same claim. "Dr. Thornton, can they do that?" "They can, and they'll probably succeed, since they are the landowners." "So I'm going to lose half the deposit?" "Not necessarily. There's a possibility of a partnership." "How so?" "You can form a company to exploit the entire deposit, dividing the profits proportionally." And if they don't want to, then each exploits their part separately. But that would be inefficient and less profitable for everyone. The partnership proposal came 2 weeks later. Derek Sullivan, the owner of the construction company, requested a meeting. "Michael Henderson, it seems we were both surprised by this discovery," said Derek in a very different tone from the one he used at the real estate agency months before. "That's true. Our lawyers say we can fight in court for years, spending a fortune on legal costs, or we can be smart and form a partnership." "What kind of partnership?" "Each keeps ownership of their land, but we exploit the deposit jointly, division of profits proportional to the size of each one's area." "How much of your land has the deposit?" "According to preliminary studies, about 30% of the formation is on our land. So you would get 30% of the profits?" "Exactly." Michael Henderson discussed the proposal with Dr. Thornton. "It's fair," said the lawyer, "and it avoids a legal fight that could last for years." "And Colorado Valley Mining, where do they stand?" "They keep their 40% on your part, so it would be you with 36%, the construction company with 30%, and Colorado Valley Mining with 34%. "I lose the majority." "You lose the majority, but you gain access to a much larger deposit. In the end, it could be more profitable." The partnership was formalized a month later. From that moment on, 3 companies jointly exploited the largest precious stone deposit discovered in Arizona in the last 50 years. Production increased significantly with access to the part of the deposit that was on the construction company's land. Dr. Frederick had underestimated the wealth of that section. "Michael Henderson, the part of the deposit on the construction company's land is even richer than yours," he revealed after the first tests. "How so?" "It has a higher concentration of high-quality emeralds. It seems it was the center of the original pegmatitic formation." "What does that mean for profits?" "It means that even with your smaller percentage, you could earn more money than you would by exploiting only your part." And Dr. Frederick was right. In the first quarter of the joint operation, Michael Henderson's profits were 40% higher than the previous quarter. But the operation's success brought new problems. News of the discovery spread nationally, attracting the attention of multinational companies interested in buying the operation. "Michael Henderson, we've received an offer from International Gemstone, an American company," informed Scott Sullivan. "They want to buy the entire operation." "For how much?" $200 million. Michael Henderson was speechless. $200 million was more money than he could imagine. "How much would my share be?" 36% of $200 million, about $72 million. It was an amount that would change not only his life, but the lives of several generations of his family and the other partners. Everyone is interested. The construction company wants to sell because their business is construction, not mining. Colorado Valley Mining wants to sell because they can invest the money in other discoveries. "And do you think we should sell?" "I think it depends on your goals. If you want to get rich quickly, we sell. If you want to get much richer over time, we keep operating." "What's the difference?" "According to the latest studies, this deposit can produce gemstones for at least 20 years. The total production value could reach 500 million or more. So if we sell now for 200 million, are we losing money? We're securing 200 million today, instead of betting on 500 million over 20 years. There are risks on both sides." Michael Henderson asked for a week to decide. During that time, he spoke with Rachel, with Jennifer, his ex-wife, with Dr. Thornton, and even with Brian, his geologist friend. "Dad, $72 million is money for several lifetimes," said Rachel. "You could stop worrying about money forever." "But honey, this might just be the beginning. This deposit could be worth much more." "And it might not be. There could be some problem, some complication." Jennifer surprisingly advised Michael Henderson not to sell. "Michael Henderson, you've spent your whole life being cautious, always taking the safest path. And where has that gotten you? You lost everything anyway." She spoke with a sincerity she hadn't shown in years. "This could be your chance to really win big. If it goes wrong, at least you tried." Dr. Thornton had a more technical opinion. "Michael Henderson, from a legal standpoint, the operation is well structured. The risks are minimal. If the deposit really lasts 20 years, You'll earn much more than 72 million. Brian was the most direct of all. Michael Henderson, you're a geologist. You know how to evaluate mineral formations. What does your professional experience say about this deposit? That it's exceptional, that it can produce for a long time. Then trust your expertise. At the end of the week, Michael Henderson made his decision. He called Scott Sullivan. Scott, I refuse the offer from International Gemstone. Are you sure? It's a lot of money. I'm sure. I want to keep operating. And if the other partners want to sell, then I'll buy their shares. With what money? I'll get financing. But when Michael Henderson communicated his decision to the other partners, he found that both wanted to sell. Michael Henderson, this might be the only opportunity to sell for such a high value, argued Derek Sullivan. And if the deposit is worth more? And if it's worth less, what if there's an environmental problem? What if mining legislation changes? Derek listed the risks. 200 million is a certainty. The future is uncertainty. Colorado Valley Mining also wanted to sell. Michael Henderson, our company works with discovering deposits, not with long-term operation, explained Dr. Raymond Cooper. We prefer to take the money now and invest in new prospecting. Michael Henderson found himself in a difficult situation. If the other partners sold their shares to International Gemstone, he would become a minority partner of an American multinational. Dr. Thornton, can I stop the sale? No. The partnership agreements allow each partner to sell their share. What if I want to exercise the right of first refusal and buy the other's shares? You can, but you would have to pay the same $200 million. It's impossible to get that much money. For an individual, yes, but you could form an American company and get domestic investors. Michael Henderson spent 2 weeks chasing after investors. He talked to banks, investment funds, and business people in the mineral sector. Everyone was interested in the project, but no one wanted to invest $200 million without solid guarantees. The deadline to exercise the right of first refusal was running out. On the eve of the last day, Michael Henderson received an unexpected call. Michael Henderson, this is Robert Candid from the American Mineral Heritage Foundation. Michael Henderson knew neither the man nor the foundation. Yes, how can I help you? I learned about your situation through some contacts in the sector. Our foundation was created to prevent important national mineral discoveries from being sold to multinational corporations. How so? We are a national investment fund, capitalized by American businessmen concerned with keeping the country's mineral wealth under national control. And you want to invest in my deposit? We want to buy the shares of your partners that are being sold to the Americans. For 200 million, for 210 million. 5% above their offer. Michael Henderson couldn't believe what he was hearing. And what would happen to our partnership? You keep your 36%, we take 64%. But we are Americans, we operate in the United States, and you remain as the General Superintendent of the operation. General Superintendent? You know the deposit better than anyone. We want you to continue leading the technical operation. It was an unexpected proposal, but one that solved all of Michael Henderson's problems. I need to think. The deadline to exercise the right of first refusal ends tomorrow. I can give you a definitive answer by 8 in the morning. Michael Henderson spent the night talking with Rachel and Dr. Thornton. Dad, does this foundation really exist? Asked Rachel. Dr. Thornton made some calls to verify. It does exist. It's serious, well capitalized, formed by respected businessmen. And is the proposal good? It's excellent. You maintain a significant stake in a much larger operation, and you also get a salary as superintendent. What would the salary be? $50,000 per month, plus a share of the profits. Michael Henderson accepted the proposal the next morning. The American Mineral Heritage Foundation exercised the right of first refusal and bought the other partners' shares. The operation continued, now under national control, with Michael Henderson as General Superintendent. His responsibility was to oversee the entire technical operation, from extraction to the cutting of the stones. 2 years later, Michael Henderson was sitting in the office they had built on the property, analyzing production reports. The deposit had produced, up to that point, more than $300 million in gemstones. His share of the profits, plus his salary as superintendent, had already earned him more than $50 million. Rachel had graduated in business administration and worked as the financial manager of the operation. Jennifer, his ex-wife, had asked for a reconciliation a few months earlier. Not because of the money, she said, but because she finally saw in him the visionary man she had fallen in love with decades ago. Michael Henderson had forgiven her, but had not gone back to living with her. He preferred to maintain the freedom he had gained along with his financial success. The operation generated jobs for more than 200 people in the region. Rockville became known nationally as the gemstone capital of the Southwest. Michael Henderson used part of his wealth to open a technical school of geology and mining, offering free courses to young people in the region. He wanted others to have the opportunity to discover and take advantage of the natural wealth of the American soil. Robert, his geologist friend, was hired as the school's educational director. Michael Henderson, who would have thought that rocky piece of land they gave you as a joke would turn into all this, said Robert during the school's inauguration. Brian, sometimes I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me in life. Why? Because it forced me to use all my knowledge and determination to succeed. If I had been given something easy, I might never have discovered what I'm capable of. Sullivan Construction, ironically, benefited enormously from the discovery. They used the mining profits to become one of the largest construction companies in the Southwest. Derek Sullivan, who had mocked Michael Henderson at the real estate office, became one of his best friends. Michael, I owe you an apology for the way I treated you that day at the real estate office, he said during a visit to the operation. Derek, you did what you thought was right at the time, and in the end we all came out ahead. But you understand I was trying to humiliate you, right? I understand, but Derek, holding a grudge doesn't change the past, and you gave me the land that changed my life. Involuntarily. It doesn't matter. The result was the same. The American Mineral Heritage Foundation became a model for other operations in the country. Robert Candid visited the deposit regularly, always impressed with the efficiency of the operation. Michael, your operation is the most successful we have in the foundation, he said on one of those visits. Why? Because you combine technical knowledge with personal passion. For you, this isn't just a business. It's a mission. That's true. This discovery gave me a second chance in life. And you made the most of it. Dr. Frederick Wallace, who continued as the operations chief geologist, always said he had never worked in a deposit so rich and well organized. Michael, in 20 years of career, this is the operation of my dreams, he commented once. Why? Because here we extract gemstones thinking long-term, with environmental responsibility, generating jobs for the community. It's not just about taking money from the ground, it's about building something sustainable. 5 years after the discovery, the deposit was still producing at a steady pace. Estimates indicated at least another 15 years of productive operation. Michael Henderson had built a simple but comfortable house on the property, from where he could observe the entire operation. He woke up every day at 5 in the morning to oversee the start of work. Rachel had married Dr. Frederick Wallace and worked as Michael's natural successor in the general superintendent role. Dad, do you ever think about retiring someday? She asked one morning. Retire to do what? This work is my life. But you already have enough money for several lifetimes. Daughter, money was a consequence. What motivates me is seeing this operation running perfectly, generating wealth for a lot of people. And when you can't work anymore, then you take over and teach your children too. This deposit can sustain our family for generations. The conversation was interrupted by Dr. Frederick Wallace, who came running. Michael, Rachel, you need to see something. The three went to a new gallery being excavated in the deepest part of the mine. What did you find? Asked Michael. Look at this. Dr. Wallace illuminated a section of the wall where enormous crystals shone with an intensity never before seen in the deposit. My God, murmured Rachel. They're emeralds the size of eggs, said Dr. Wallace. And the purity. I've never seen anything like it. How much can they be worth? Each one of these could be worth more than $1 million. Michael looked at the stones shining in the rock wall, thinking about the entire journey that had brought him there, from the humiliation at the real estate office to that moment of renewed discovery. "Dr. Wallace, it seems our deposit still has many surprises to give us." "It seems so. And you know what? I don't think we've even reached the most interesting part of the formation yet." "How so?" "The geological analyses show the pegmatitic formation goes down even deeper. There could be levels of richness we haven't even imagined." That night, Michael Henderson climbed onto the roof of his house to observe the stars. It was something he did every night since he had moved to the property for good. Looking at the illuminated operation that ran 24 hours a day, he thought about how life can change in unexpected ways. Years ago, he was in one of the worst phases of his life, humiliated, without money, almost without hope. Now he controlled one of the largest mineral discoveries in the country, had generated jobs for hundreds of people, and built a legacy that would last generations. But what made him proudest wasn't the wealth. It was having proven that knowledge, determination, and honesty still counted for something in this world. His phone rang. It was Daniel Morrison, the gemstone appraiser who had done the first analysis of the crystals years ago. "Michael, I'm calling with news that's going to blow your mind." "What is it, Daniel?" "The emeralds you found in the new gallery. I just finished the full analysis." "And?" "Michael, these stones are museum quality, some of the best emeralds ever found in the world." "How much are they worth?" "The largest one could be worth $5 million, and there are more than 20 stones of that size in the gallery." Michael Henderson fell silent, trying to process the information. "Daniel, does that mean just this gallery has over 100 million in emeralds?" "It could be much more." "And Michael, that's just what we've been able to see so far," the gallery continues. After hanging up the phone, Michael Henderson stayed a few more minutes looking at the stars. It was hard to believe there were still more riches hidden in the property. He thought about the irony of it all. Derek Sullivan and his partners had given him that land as a cruel joke, thinking it was a useless gift for someone who had already lost everything. Now, that gift was worth hundreds of millions of dollars and kept revealing new surprises. But Michael Henderson had learned that the real value of the discovery wasn't in the money. It was in the second chance life had given him, in the opportunity to rebuild not only his financial situation, but his dignity, his family relationships, and his sense of purpose. The discovery had proven that sometimes what seems like an obstacle can hide the greatest opportunities, and that knowledge combined with perseverance can transform any situation, no matter how desperate it seems. End of story. And you, what did you think of this incredible story of overcoming? Do you believe Michael Henderson made the right decisions throughout the journey? Leave your opinion in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. If this story moved you as much as it moved me, don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one. Your subscription makes all the difference, so we can continue bringing these narratives that touch the heart. Thank you so much for your company.